Urban sounds that wake the morning, filling streets with faces scorning. Yesterday's hope died peacefully, out looking for a real reality, out looking for a real reality.
Chicano is very positive. It's a derivative of the word Mexica, Mexicano. That's indigenous to our people and our language. It's part of our mother tongue. It's not Spanish, and it's not English.
I would like to ask you a few questions about your involvement in the Chicano movement as a journalist and your contributions. If you'd like to tell us a little bit about how you got there, what led you to being a involved journalist.
I spent 1968 and a little bit of 1969 in Vietnam, and then I went to the Mesa College. Vietnam politicized me. I came back with the intention or with the idea that the Vietnam War was an unjust war, and I was against it, even though I had served there. And I came back as an activist against the war. I joined the Vietnam Veterans Against the War, and I had attended several demonstrations prior to my involvement with the Chicano movement. I got out of the service and I went to school at Mesa College in Grand Junction, and I got out of. I got out in December of '69. So by the spring of '70, I was involved in some protests on the campus with other veterans.
Early '60s, it was an awakening of, and really addressing and dealing with 500 years of oppression. What's happened since Europeans landed on this continent? A lot of the misinformation about our people, our history, our language, and our culture. The exclusion of contributions that were made by our people is kind of like the catalyst that launched a lot of things with the Chicano movement.
It was while I was at Mesa College that I kind of shifted gears. I also was introduced to the Chicano movement by an activist there in Grand Junction by the name of Ray Otero. And after getting to know Ray a little better, getting to understand the issues, I became committed to the cause, you might say. But the other important thing that happened at Mesa College was I learned journalism. I took all the journalism classes that they offered, and I became the editor of the campus newspaper. And so I learned the mechanics of producing a newspaper. We did our own. In those days, we pasted the newspaper together before we took it to print. So I learned all of that process. And then when I joined the Chicano movement, I recognized that the Chicano movement would benefit from their own publications. And so I started making publications.
So in your experience at Mesa Junior College, you realized the power in print media, and so you expanded on that when you got to Boulder.
Kind of. I think I always recognized the power of the media. I mean, I grew up with Walter Cronkite and Eric Severide and some of the great journalists of at least my generation. And I knew that media had power. I never thought I would ever share with that power.
Did you know that you were going to be involved in the Chicano movement to the extent that you were on your arrival at Boulder?
No, not really. I went to the Colorado Daily and I applied for a job, and the first thing they asked me to do was interview the new UMAS president, Florencio Granado. And I went down and interviewed him. I didn't realize that there was a big fight going on between the newspaper and the UMAS organization, and they kind of sent me into the lion's den, but it worked out. Freddie and I became great friends, and little by little, you know what, it was in the spring of 1972, the university fired a guy by the name of Ricardo Falcon. He had been an administrator there, one of the first members of UMAS, the United Mexican American Students. When they fired Ricardo, we protested. There were marches, a couple thousand students marching on Regent Hall. We took over Regent Hall for most of a day. Regent Hall's like City Hall on a university campus. Then these guys approached me. They said, "We hear you know how to make newspapers." And I said, "Yeah, I know how to make newspapers." They said, "Well, what would it take to make a little special edition about this issue?" I said, "Well, printing about $250. The next day, Freddie Granado handed me an envelope with $250 cash, said, "Make a newspaper." And that was the first edition of El Diario de la Gente, a newspaper that I founded in Boulder that printed for or published for about 8 years. Through that little vehicle of a newspaper, I met most of the leaders of the Chicano movement. Reyes Lopez Tejerina, Jorge Gonzalez, Cesar Chavez. I don't know if you remember the anti-war protesters, a couple of priests, I know them as the Barragan brothers, Angela Davis. I mean, we met the leading activists of the day as journalists. We took notes of their speeches. When I had the opportunity, I interviewed them. When I went to interview Cesar Chavez, I spent, I said, hey, can we spend some time together? And I could do an extended interview. And he agreed that the next day he was going to visit about 3 different television stations in Denver, and he agreed that I could tag along. So your mom and I spent the day with Cesar Chavez doing kind of a lengthy interview about, they were in the middle of the 1973 grape strike. And he recruited me. He says, hey, I need a journalist. He says, I got a newspaper. He says, can you come out and spend the summer? And first day we were out of school, we packed our bags and we went to California.
So what kind of circulation did this newspaper have? Was it a lot of students being reached by this information?
I mean, you're talking about the El Diario?
Yes.
Gosh, we printed 10,000. And we distributed about half of them on campus, and then the rest we went through Chicano organizations all over the northern part of the state. We had readers in Greeley, Fort Collins, Brighton, Fort Lupton, Denver, Pueblo. We did a couple special editions just for Pueblo. We came down, we printed 5,000 issues of a special edition for the Cinco de Mayo for 2 years before we moved here.
Can you tell me more what we can do to help our children succeed today?
Some of the things that need to be done for our children is to become more vocal as parents, as grandparents, and supposedly taking leadership roles, enabling young people to be who they are, but start providing a broader base of support for them. When I was going to school, nobody talked to me or educated me about Josefa, about Emiliano Zapata, about Crazy Horse. A lot of indigenous people, it was all, they were bandits, thieves, crooks. So the word Chicano is a threat because it's based on self-determination and self-reliance. And a lot of people feel comfortable accepting second best, taking leftovers. And as a Chicano, I don't.
One of the reasons that I got into the business from the very beginning is that when I first started studying Chicano studies, there were no resources. It was like we were invisible. If you look at American history books that were printed in the 50s and 60s, there are no Chicanos. There are hardly any Mexican Americans. It's a black and white world. And I got to tell you now, at the end of my career, or towards the end of my career, we're at least in the books.
People who believe that those are dead issues, you're saying that it's very much alive and very much the responsibility of my generation and those to follow to keep making people aware of those issues that we face. And like you said, documenting it, bringing it to the attention of people who are unaware.
My generation now remembers the no Mexicans or dogs allowed signs in barbershop windows and places like that in the little town of Montrose where I grew up. Those signs are gone, but the mentality is still there.
Do you recognize yourself, the contributions that you made as a journalist?
Well, what I did is I created the archives of the Chicano movement. I have photographs that I took that are they're in safe places, let's just put it that way. Most of the newspapers I produced are in microfilm, and they're in the custody of the Colorado State Historical Society. Northern Library at CU has a complete collection of all the El Diarios. I have my own archives, which I intend someday to turn over to some responsible entity. Do
you see your work at the Pueblo Chieftain as an ongoing contribution to the community, to the Chicano community specifically?
Well, if you just look at my life's work as a pile of stuff, the biggest pile is at the Pueblo Chieftain. I produced more copy there than I ever did through any of the other involvement. I would say this, I'd say that Chicano media prepared me for a professional career in the recognized media.
Yeah, definitely aspire to be a strong journalist and a strong Chicano journalist. What would you suggest, or what would you like to see young journalists today Chicana journalists, what contribution do you think that we can make to our society?
Pick up that video camera. You can buy a video camera for a couple $100 now. There's no excuse for not making documentaries. Everything we do that's worth documenting should be on tape. You know, you can make a full-length movie for probably $50,000. You know, it's probably cheaper now than it's ever been. And it's the same revolution that took place in print in my generation. We accessed the print media because they went from lead type to offset press, and getting printed, have a newspaper printed on an offset press was a fraction of the cost of going through lead type. And that's what opened the door for us, gave us the opportunity to print our newspapers. Well, the same thing's happening now in DVD and websites and in digital video. I mean, like I say, I don't think there's any excuse for not continuing to document everything that our community does.
A lot of people come up to me and say that you have changed their lives and that you made their high school experience something that it would have never been had they not had a teacher like yourself that made them feel important and made them care about themselves. I think that your contribution is instilling identity and giving these kids an identity and showing them what they can be proud of in your own success, as well as reaching into them and bringing out their own potential.
You know, all I'm doing is giving them a life's experience, stuff that you can't find in books. Hardly any student has ever come up to me during the semester that they're in my class saying, "Man, you're really a great teacher, really helping me out. You're doing," you know, it's a whip and a chair almost every day. But, you know, it's like 2 or 3 years later, they snap. They go, "Wow, you know what? I know a lot of stuff about my culture and who I am because of a Chicano Studies class that I took." And that's the payoff, because I have always said this, that you can design your own culture. You can become any culture you want to be. We have a culture, and we have the ability to pick and choose the things that about our culture that we like, that we want to pass on to the next generation.
My main focus has been working with young people. Adults a lot of times become complacent. They learn how to be successful to a certain point, and they're satisfied with it. Young people are still, their minds are open, they're inquisitive, they still dream. So that's why I choose to work with youth.
You know, I've had roughly 1,000 students, and I probably can name about 300 of them. And I see them. I see them in the community every day. I see them at the state fair. I see them pushing strollers. They introduce me to their kids. I see them get jobs. I see them advance. You know what? I can't think of one that went to prison. And I think that says a lot.
Well, what I do is for the unborn. They're not even here yet. And that's what's exciting about what I do and about young people, because a lot of times young people are told by adults, teachers, parents, "You're the future, you're the future, you're the future. Now shut up, sit down, behave, get out of the way, and act your age." And what I tell young people is, you're more than that. You're more than the future. You're today. Without today, there is no tomorrow. Without no tomorrow, there is no future.
Chicano journalism is only one way to preserve our culture. The other way is to learn to make tortillas, to learn to make adobes, to learn to make something traditional. You know, things don't happen. I mean, the tortilla didn't develop overnight. Somebody didn't say, "Well, let's make this piece of flat bread and start eating it." It developed through thousands of years of evolution, from the very tiny corn, and you know what I'm saying? And the same thing with the adobe. And we live in a technology-crazy society that thinks that we can solve everything with technology. Well, sometimes we overkill with technology. Sometimes it's the simpler things, the easy things, the things that are proven over hundreds of years that work best. And when we lose those things, then it's almost impossible to regain it. As you know, it's one of my hobbies is to perpetuate the knowledge of adobe. You know, your mother runs a museum. She's perpetuating the culture, the history of you know, I guess what I'm saying is that if we look for it, every person has that opportunity in their way, with their skill, their knowledge, to perpetuate something cultural for the next generation.
Our community, our children deserve the best. Nobody owes it to us, but it's a process of being proud of who you are and then struggling to make those accomplishments.
I've spent all of my life searching in quest for truth I seek to find. Just a reason or a purpose that hints the meaning of my life. 'Cause I just wanna be as free as the wind,